Sometimes you just need to hit the reset button. Maybe it's from walking out of a hard conversation, or perhaps something bigger is going on at work. But either way, when you embrace a reset mindset, it can get you unstuck and moving forward. And today's guest is going to explain exactly how to do just that. Today's guest is Penny Zenker. Penny is known as the Focusologist. She's a sought-after international keynote speaker and best-selling author. She is one of the leading experts in the psychology of productivity to eliminate distraction, perfectionism, and self-sabotage to maximize results personally and professionally. And she just released her newest book, The Reset Mindset. Get unstuck, focus on what matters most, and reach your goals faster. Now, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I share new episodes and other tips for managers every week. Now, here's the conversation. Thank you so much for joining me today, Penny. I'm so excited to have you on my show after getting to be on your show. That was such a fun conversation. I hope listeners will check it out, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But I'm so glad you're here today to talk about your new book. Tell us what it is. Tell us what it's all about, because I love mindset stuff, and this is like a really fun mindset.
It's the reset mindset. So I'm super excited. You know, mindset is so crucial to our success, and it's what mindset is needed today with the rate of change, the level of uncertainty, right? And what worked last week or last month or last year is not necessarily what's going to work tomorrow, next week, or next year. So the reset mindset just helps us to be, the whole idea is about dynamic reassessment and a willingness to reinvent and what that means in that, right? Because I believe like a mindset is like a cluster of beliefs. And when we activate a reset mindset, even with just a word like reset, that it loads those beliefs for us, you know, like a software program, right? So we can activate an entire mindset, you know, with a certain practice. And so that's what I kind of talk about in the book, and practical ways to put this into your everyday, practical stories that, you know, that help us to understand it.
Maybe you could start with one of those stories just to give us a sense of what the reset mindset looks like in action. And then we can dive into why it's important and how to do it and all that great stuff. And maybe just kind of paint us a picture of like, what does a moment look like when you want to activate that reset mindset?
I want to back up for a second, because I think what most people think of when they think of a reset moment, because that's what I call that moment. Most people think of like big things that happen, like, okay, you know, I had an illness and that changed my life, or a death in the family. But those reset moments, they can be every single day, right? If we pay attention and we're intentional. So it doesn't only have to be those big reset moments. Those are reset moments too. So what does it look like practically in every day? It could look like what you do when you wake up, as an example, is, are you intentional for the day, right? That reset moment could be when you recognize that you're really tired and you just want to hit that snooze button and you reach over, right? Or for one of the old ones, right? To set the alarm or push it off. That's your reset moment to go, no, I set an intention that I wanted to get up at this time because I have this, and this that are important to me. So you want to have that moment where you might take the path that's least productive or least efficient, or you get triggered in a moment where somebody says something to you and you think you might want to say something rude and obnoxious back because they were rude and obnoxious to you. But that's a good time to take a reset moment to just take that purposeful pause and find a better way that's going to be more productive. So those are kind of some concrete examples.
I love these. And it shows us, as you're saying, that it doesn't have to be only when something big is happening, but having this habit built in every single day, there are opportunities to use it. I love that. Before we dive into more about this, I want to just kind of do a little sidestep, because the other mindsets that you talk about and kind of how this is different, and I think it's really helpful before we get too far in, is to do a little compare and contrast between growth mindset and reset mindset. And you talk about them in the book because there are some things they have in common that I don't want listeners to get confused about. So maybe you can kind of just give us a quick framing so we can really be clear about reset mindset.
Yeah, definitely. So, Carol Dweck did this amazing work in her book called Mindset, the New Psychology of Success. And she talked about fixed mindset and growth mindset. And really a quick understanding of that is a fixed mindset is sticking to what you know. It's believing that you don't have the ability to change what's happening around you. So it is what it is kind of thing. And I'm helpless to it. So it's in a little way, it's being caught up in being a victim, or it could be fear that you've had great success and you don't want to change anything because, you might ruin your opportunity to continue to have that kind of success. A growth mindset, from what she talks about, is understanding that we have influence, that we can learn from our mistakes, and that will help us to grow and implement going forward, and that we can develop skills, that it's through effort and persistence that we can really create the growth that we're looking for and the success. What I did when I thought about what we need today and talking about the reset mindset is building off of the growth mindset and having the awareness of where you are. But today we need to be more dynamic. We can't wait until the end of the year to review what we learned and grow from that learning. Like, things are changing so fast. And in order for us to deal with the amount of pressure and stress that we feel with the uncertainty and the change, we need to have dynamic reassessment. And that is the reset mindset, is being ready and willing as information comes in to learn as you go. So meaning that you're taking that feedback as you go and you're integrating it real time, right? It's more of a real time exercise than it is an after the fact. So what it also means is we don't need to put forth as much effort. Why should we do that? We're burning ourselves out with all of the effort. It's less effort to just take a few steps and check in. What are we experiencing? How are people responding? And that makes all the difference in us reducing the stress levels that we have and being able to actually go further faster. And so that's what today's mindset calls for, is a reset mindset.
Yes, yes, yes. And I love that these things can go hand in hand, and we can hold them both, and they will both reinforce each other in positive ways. I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about what the benefits of the reset mindset are, right? There's this less effort you just talked about, right? And there's kind of a speed and agility to it. But how else is really integrating, and you talk about it as a practice, right? Having the reset mindset as a practice. How else does it really help us as managers in our workday to put the effort in to do that step back and to be intentional?
Well, I think one of the biggest benefits for managers and leaders is it helps them to build other leaders. That's one of the biggest complaints that I hear is, people aren't accountable and people don't have the skills to grow into these leadership positions. Well, when we use this reset practice in teaching people through our actions and through our processes, through our language, to engage in this reset mindset, we're helping them to be more autonomous and be able to make better and more effective decisions. So that in itself helps them to be leaders. And then because it's a simple practice, it's a language, it's a practice, right? And it's individual tools. And so that gives them something to use themselves, but also to pass along to others that they're working with. So I think that's one of the biggest benefits, because building other leaders is key to success, and giving people that autonomy. That's what they want today. I mean, I think they've always wanted it, but today they're standing for it. And they're saying, either you get off my back and stop micromanaging. Well, you don't have to micromanage when you tell people, when you have a process of thinking. You say, this is how we think about things, is we don't get caught up in assumptions. We don't judge a situation. We explore it. We experiment. And so when that becomes part of, and these are the steps that you take in order to do that. So you step back and you get some clarity on it, some objectivity, and really see where we are, confirm where we want to go. Because very often each of us might be solving a different problem, get in alignment on what is that problem. And then most importantly, which most people don't do, is that second step, which is to get perspective, so that we're exploring the options. We are such lazy creatures, and I'm myself included. For every finger I point out there, I point back at me, is that we want to go with that first solution. Let's get on with it. This is it. It's come up and the person who speaks the loudest brought it up. And so we're going to run with it. But it's often not the best solution. It's just the most obvious or the one in front of us. So when we get perspective, we want to explore different opportunities, different options, different scenarios, different points of views, so we can really find the best next step for the team or for us as individuals to realign around.
Yes, 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 yes. The more that we can take these tools to help ourselves, but then to help our team members, like that's where it gets exponentially powerful. So you just started talking through these steps. Can you maybe go deeper into kind of the 3 different steps and what we are doing in those steps to get ourselves prepared for when we have these moments in our lives?
What I want to say is that I mentioned the reset moments earlier. So let's call that the event that triggers this 3-step practice. So I want people to understand that it's actually even easier than it sounds, because when you truly take a reset moment, it's intuitive. You will do these 3 steps intuitively, especially the more you practice it in those smaller moments. It's just a way of thinking. And so the first step that I talked about was to step back. We get stuck in things, right? So we can't see clearly. It's the example, if you're sitting on a chair, right, then you can't see the chair if the chair is the problem. So you have to step back away from it, away from the person that you might have a conflict with, away from the way you're doing it currently to be able to see a better way. You have to step back away from it so that you can really see it for what it is. Maybe there's some questions that trigger that so that you can step away from the emotions, the assumptions, and really be able to open up to perspective. Because if you're not open and you're not seeing things objectively, then the other steps you won't really benefit from them. So you have to be able to be in that place. And maybe it's even just put on someone else's hat. What do you see from the situation? If you're too close to it, stepping back, the further back that you step, the more clarity that you're going to see the situation from. So sometimes we need help with other people.
Is there an element of stepping back that also involves kind of an emotional step back?
For sure. For sure. I don't know the context of what you mean, but I think that's the key, because we don't examine the facts because we're emotionally connected to the situation. So I think the stepping back is emotional. When our emotions are high, our intellect is low. And it's that relationship that gets us messed up, right? Is that when and even if we're overly excited about something, right? It could be also that we are just like, and so we're not seeing the risks and we're not seeing the situation of where we can get ourselves into trouble. So any type of high emotion, it's like, okay, let's step away from that. And a lot of times what I like to use, and each one of these, and I talk very vaguely about it in the book, and there's more on my online learning center, but each one of these has many tools that you could use. So for instance, a manager, a very often and well used and great framework for stepping back is maybe like a SWOT analysis, to look at the strengths and the weaknesses and the opportunities and the threats. So we can use tools to help us to take away the emotion and answer the questions from the framework of the tool that helps us to put a frame around it and go, okay, let's take a look at each of these quadrants and answer those questions. And now we see things more clearly. So, each one is a container. Stepping back is a container for many different things that you could do in that phase.
I'm so excited for all this because I feel like there's times where we don't step back because we're just too busy. We're just like in go mode, as you said, and like there's no time for stepping back. We're just running. And then there are times we don't step back because we are emotionally connected to something, right? Like, as you said, you could be really excited about an idea. And so it's almost like you don't want to step back because you don't want to be wrong about this idea because you're just so excited for it, right? Or it feels like it's how you've always done it. And therefore it's part of you, or it's tradition and having to let go, or maybe it's a fear, but whatever it might be, I feel like there's both the, like, we're just so busy and that gets in the way. And sometimes it's our emotions that get in the way. And kind of, for me at least, knowing that those are two potential opportunities to say, wait a second here, maybe this calls for a step back kind of moment because I'm rushing past something either because I think I'm too busy or I'm too emotionally connected and it's time for a revisit. So thank you for kind of laying that out. And the SWOT analysis is such a great tool. I love that tool.
Yeah, and it's simple, right? I try to stick with the most simplest things, right? Step back can be what's working, what's not working. It doesn't have to be rocket science. It just has to be something that helps you step back. I love what you said about, the busy, and it's worthwhile to say something here is I've experienced a lot of managers and leaders who are saying they're just too busy to lead. And so they're not getting that awareness. They're not tapping into how their people are really feeling, what really is in the way of productivity and people's best work. And so they're skipping one-on-ones and those times when that would be a tool to actually step back and have that conversation and really understand what's going on. And so I just want to put it out there for people, whenever we say we don't have the time, and you alluded to this, that's exactly the time when you should step back, when you should take a reset moment, because it means you're probably going to miss something because you're making an excuse of blocking out something that you definitely need to do. We don't have the time to lose our best people. We don't have the time to go too far in the wrong direction and have to back up or redo work that was done incorrectly. So I think we always have to remind ourselves when we hear ourselves say something like, I don't have the time. And I just found myself recently doing that. I am totally overcommitted right now, and I'm listening to my language. And that's one of the things that we can step back and do. And I'm recognizing every time I say it, I'm like, no, we need to be clear, step back. What's really going on here? And it's really the overwhelm that's talking.
Yes. Okay, move us into step 2. So we did the step back. Now what's next?
So step 2 is get perspective. That is, like I briefly mentioned earlier, it's opening up to the different scenarios, the different ideas, the potential solutions, and talking to different people from different parts of the organization or different types of customers. It's the feedback. That's where we get the feedback, and that's where we turn information into insights. When we don't take perspective, then we are not creating insights. And those insights are that piece that keeps us dynamic.
You use a phrase in the book early on around the word else, like why else? How else? What else? And I found that to be such a simple but powerful approach to say, okay, I see this, but how else could I interpret this information? Or who else might have a different perspective I should go talk to? And giving yourself that, just the simple tool of just adding the word else onto something suddenly opens up a whole world of possible thinking and different perspectives.
Absolutely, right? Again, I'm always looking for the simple, practical solutions. And you're right. That's all you need to do. How else? What else? Where else? Who else? It opens it up to our thinking.
I'm wondering if you could share a story. I feel like this is a good moment for whether it's a story from your own life or for one of your clients who has gone through those first steps and kind of had that insight because they did that thinking and they took that perspective.
So I had a situation where I was hired into a management team, a leadership team, and I wasn't really welcomed to that team. There was a little bit of competitive nature, and I wasn't welcomed in, besides the fact that I was a foreigner, and that wasn't so accepted. And I was a woman, the only woman, and I was young. So all of these things led to a little bit of resistance. And I had one particular person who, whenever I went to reach out for him, with him, he was the CFO. And so we would need to run scenarios together. And so he would give me someone else on his team to work with me. And I just didn't feel like, so my first assumption, right? And this is coming to the what else could this mean type of thing. My first assumption was he doesn't care. He's blocking me out. He just wants to vie for his CEO position because he was busy sort of going off to other group companies. And I was frustrated and I really took it personally. I felt like it was against me and that he was not looking after the best interest of the company. At that time, my boss, he had suggested that I work with a coach to support me, knowing that there was some of this resistance, and how could I, maybe he was seeing that I was playing the victim a little bit, and how could I focus on what I could control and step out of that fixed mindset into that growth mindset in that particular situation. And she took me through a very simple exercise. And it's kind of like the else exercise. It's a little bit of a role play. So I'd stand here in this position, and I would, as I was facing the person that I was talking to, and I would share my position. And then she said, okay, so now I want you to go into his position and share from his place and really stand like he would stand and talk like he would talk. And it was amazing. And this is done in sales, but unfortunately not a whole lot elsewhere in other leadership roles. Any conversation, any conflict, you can do this. And I couldn't believe what came out of my mouth. I was like, oh my goodness, he might be feeling like that. He's under so much pressure to run all these different group companies. You've just got this one scenario. I've got to do that for 10 companies. Like, I was just like, oh my goodness. So I had a new insight to him. And then that's what else could this mean? Right. And then she said, now I want you to go to position C, as if you're overlooking those other two people. And this I had never heard of before, as if you're the fly on the wall. And I want you to say, what else could this mean? And what are these two missing? I was like, whoa, mind blown that now you're seeing that these two don't understand that they're working towards the same thing. They're just, really coming at it from very different perspectives because they have different pressures. And so what else could this mean? It just opened up for me a better way to handle my relationship with him. So instead of, from that point forward, I looked for, what did we have in common? Where could we connect so that we could build a relationship? I didn't need to like him, and he didn't need to be my friend, but what could I respect about him? And where could we draw on that commonality so we could create a working environment that would work for us? And I think that was one of the more profound uses of that what else in that context.
Such a great story, and what a great tool to have that perspective taking and then do that third party perspective, that fly on the wall perspective. Oh my gosh, love this. I can't wait to try that for myself.
Yeah, I think I did share that in the book. So I think I did share at least the ABCs. I call it the ABCs of perspective. So I did share that. So
all right. So that sounds like moving us into phase 3 of the now what do you do with all of this?
So now it's amazing because you stepped back and you got some clarity on what problem you're solving and where you are now and where it is that you're going. You got some ideas about ways that you can approach this differently. It's also for creativity. I think that's important too. It's not just to solve a problem in terms of, it's also looking at new ways to approach the marketplace or new products, right? But as soon as you get clear on, okay, now I'm going to how do I realign? How do I align what I do on a day-to-day basis with that perspective of this is the best way forward and in service of that goal? So it's helping us to align our actions with our goal based on that. Let's call it a strategy, right? Getting that perspective helps us to understand the strategy or the approach that we're going to take. And so that can be for me individually. So now I can better ask myself better questions every time I run into competing priorities. I can say, well, how does this align with this perspective and what I'm working towards? But also as an organization, how does that align? And when you see that get off, that's where you call another reset moment, because it's a cyclical thing. That's why it's dynamic. We have to keep challenging and checking in. So we go, hey, wait a second. We said this was our top priority. Is this still the case? Because you want me to do this, this, and this, and those things are going to take 50% of my time and take me away, right? So it gives you individually and collectively a way to communicate without aggression, right? To make it more of a conversation than a conflict, if that makes sense.
Yes. And I think that's something, that particular example you just gave around, you're now asking me to do all these other things, and my plate is full already. And so how does this fit into the priorities that I'm supposed to be working on? And, what's really important here? That's a conversation that so many managers should be having with their team members, right? Every time that we're shifting direction, setting a new goal, adding something onto someone's plate, right? Like that should be part of the conversation is let's take a step back. What else is on your plate? Let's figure this out together. Let's make sure that your time and energy is focused on the right things, aligned with where we're headed. But we don't, right? We just hand something over. We say, okay, new goal, run.
Well, and often we don't know what that person's working on. Like, that happens a lot where they've decided and they're involved in a lot of different things. So they've set up what they think they need to do to be successful. And you don't always know as a manager. So 100% what you're saying is that conversation needs to go a little deeper to see and be clear on where they should be spending their time.
Yes, yes, yes. And then of course we can use it with our boss and do it the other way, right? We can lift that conversation upwards as well. All right, but we are out of time. So Penny, can you tell us about a great manager that you worked for and what made this person such a fabulous boss?
My best mentor and boss was, his name was Peter. And, what made him a great boss was his openness. And I think that he reinforced this practice within me because he practiced it. Like I was always impressed. He worked his way from the lowest level, kind of like the mailroom guy to the CEO type of thing. So the lowest level in the organization to the CEO. He was CEO when I met him, for more than 15 years. And I thought, oh, he's going to be stale, somebody who's in that position for so long, like stagnant, not moving. He was always looking and attending other industry conferences. And I was like, why would you attend other industry conferences? Because he wants to gain new ideas and new perspectives that he can bring back to his industry. So, he was always demonstrating and that he was open to new ways of working. I had a child and he was totally open to me working 4 days a week. And I lived in Switzerland where it was very male dominated and they were not very flexible. So he was very ahead of his time in the way that he thought and he worked. And he asked brilliant questions. He simplified things and he asked questions. He never tried to fix my problems, always tried to ask me a question so I could fix my problems. And I think it's those leaders that you respect the most.
Yes. Love this. Sounds like an incredible human. And where can people learn more about you? Remind us of your book and where we can get it, all that jazz.
Absolutely. Well, they can find out more about me in my book at theresetmindset.net. That's where they can learn more about the book. They can actually buy the book. And I've got so many great bonuses that I'm offering when they buy the book before the end of September. So September is launch month. So we're celebrating. There's going to be a big launch party and them buying the ticket. Their ticket in is buying the book. So I would love to see them and to talk more about it, theresetmindset.net.
Fabulous. Well, thank you again. This was so fun. I love getting to learn from you and I love our conversations. So thanks again.